It's the Sig Show.
It's the Sig Show.
It's the Sig Show.
Welcome, everybody, to the Schick Show. I'm here today with one of my former coaches and mentors, someone who I've learned a lot from, who I have a ton of respect for, and he has been an educator for over 30 years, and he's won multiple state championships as a high school baseball coach. He is a member of the IHSAA Baseball Hall of Fame. Is that right?
That's
IHSAA?
right. 195th.
195th
Hall of Fame
class.
member.
That's awesome.
Member, yeah.
Oh, member.
There's only like 210.
Oh, wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
And currently, he's a varsity coach for our alma mater, Blackford Bruin baseball team, Tony Uggen. Thanks for being here, Coach.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So you have had an interesting few years. I would say since probably 2016 through now, it's been a pretty interesting ride.
Yeah,
Maybe the last few have been.
especially since COVID.
Yes.
Things definitely took a turn for the worse there quickly, but it's definitely challenged me, and thankfully I've overcome all that stuff.
Not just that. I mean, you battled some COVID stuff. Sorry, I'm trying to turn off my ringer on my phone. The last thing I want is
I didn't think to do that either.
phone call. But you've been battling some other stuff. You had a hip replaced, right?
That's correct. Yeah, just had that. When was that? February 28th, and I'm up around 95% now, getting around good. I was at the point where I literally had to crawl to go to the bathroom toward the end.
Gosh, man.
I called it locking up, but basically it was I could not put weight on one of my legs, my right leg, and I would stand toward the end. I had to practice, and I tried to do as little as possible, hoping I could get out because I knew the surgery was coming. And I got stuck after I sat down, which was a mistake, and I couldn't move for 45 minutes. And everybody's looking at me, all right? And it's weird when you go to restaurants, you get out of the car, and if I got on my weight and I could put weight on it, I knew I was okay. But then there were times I got out and I couldn't, and then people are driving by like, are you okay? Because I'm just standing there, and they're probably thinking, what's that guy doing? I said, I'm fine. I just can't put weight on this leg once I do. And then you're thinking, I hope he's not somebody's thinking about doing something because I can't even defend myself at this point. But no, I got through that pretty well, and Roy Sandberg, Dr. Sandberg, did my surgery, and it's been really great. And in fact, Jack Rupley, the coach of Manchester, he got one a couple months after I did.
Really?
Except he got the front side, I got the back side done. But it was kind of neat that he just ended his career, a long career, and we both got him like a month or two apart. So
Wow.
feeling pretty good right now. So it's encouraging. Can't run yet, never will probably, but that's okay.
Well, I was wondering about that because I remember a few years ago you ran a marathon.
I ran 4,
Yeah.
and several halves, and as I kind of listen to you guys talk to Dalton, that's stuff that I wish I could still do, and so I'm kind of cheering him on because it's interesting to hear what he's doing. It's like, yeah, I remember that, but he's a lot more athletic than I ever was. So
Man, that guy is
he's determined.
he is. I mean, he just his competitive spirit is. It's admirable, to say the least. I mean, he just goes after it.
Yeah.
Okay, can't play baseball, football, basketball anymore. All right, what's
I'm gonna
next?
run.
Oh, let's see. I'll become a weightlifter and compete in strength challenges. Oh, well, I just figured out I can run. Let's run a marathon.
Yeah, anything in triathlon or something now or something maybe.
So I wish that would be really cool because maybe I could go out and bike with him a little bit because I sure can't run.
I think his dad might have mentioned it.
Oh,
He
really?
was considering it because I think it was the swimming maybe that might be the issue. Because I don't think he's a great swimmer, but he's learned how.
I was gonna say
What I heard.
there's no doubt that guy's
He'll
gonna
figure it out.
Yeah,
Uh,
dang good athlete. He was talking about a 100-miler. He's wanting to compete in a 100-miler at the end of the year here, and he doesn't have anything scheduled. I think he said after October, or maybe September. September or August is his last marathon for the year, so he was thinking about this 100-mile race.
Is that one day?
I
thought his
think
dad
it's
said
a
it was 1 day.
24-hour.
Dude,
Yeah. and
Wow.
So I don't know if you listen to any David Goggins or not. He has David Goggins has his ear. He listens to a lot of David Goggins. I kind of introduced some different stuff to him, and I think when he was an 8th grader and we talked about introducing him to Eric Thomas, a motivational speaker, and then I think through that he just keeps looking for that next person. And Goggins is absolutely a maniac, and has typically a 100-mile race is a team thing. So it'll be a
Okay.
team that
Oh,
competes
okay.
24 hours to run 100 miles.
Oh,
And there's a story out there about David Goggins running a 100-mile race by himself.
that's
And
insane. I've done 2 marathons. I think it was 2 weeks apart, and surprisingly, felt pretty good the second one. But I told Brian, I said, one day, my goodness,
no,
my body couldn't overcome that fast.
that's all. That's a young man's game.
How to
that's
even
for sure.
start that? 100 to go.
I played wiffle ball the other night, and I thought I was running hard to first base. And Jennifer was watching. She was like, "You weren't running fast. You were like in a hurried jog." That's what she called it, a hurried jog. And I thought I was running. I thought, man, I got there pretty fast. I beat it out a couple times. I had a triple.
It's sad the way life catches up to you. I did one of those games. The former Bruins got together, take a reunion type thing or whatever it was, and I laid down a bunt, and I thought I could barely get to first base. I was probably in my 40s then, like, oh my. Brain says yes, body says no.
There's no bunting in alumni games, Tony. No way, no how. So not only the hip replacement, before that you're battling with some COVID stuff. Do you want to share anything about that?
Yeah, that was interesting because, like everybody else at the time, my wife and I was like, yeah, you know, the mask and all that. And I was like, I don't really want to get it unless you want to and talk about that stuff. It's kind of like, yeah, this is just another illness of some sort that affects people. You know, we don't know what it is yet, of course. And I had started getting some chills and fever symptoms, flu symptoms. And one day I was sitting on it's been late August of 2020. Is that when it got?
Probably.
Yeah. Because it already started, so it was a few months into it. And in fact, it was funny because looking back, I'd went to a football game. I'd coughed that afternoon, and I told Lisa Musselman, my secretary, I said, I've got COVID. I'm going to be out for a couple weeks, jokingly.
I remember you telling me about that.
She goes, oh, you better not be. That night, we went to the football scrimmage at Eastern, and I had my dad, Russ Sutton, and somebody else, Don Fisher, was with me. They're all in their 70s and 80s. I didn't know. So I'm going around talking to their AD, Eric Hisner, and we're there. And when I come back, I noticed that I was kind of had a little cough, and it was getting closer. The time frame was getting a little bit closer. So I decided, I better check. And it turns out I was positive. Well, then I started having the fevers and the chills and all that stuff, which I generally don't get. Usually, you know, I get sick, I get bad usually, and I get through it. I told my wife, I'm going to go up and take a shower. I just don't feel right. And I got up, and I got in the shower, and all of a sudden it was like, and I said, something is wrong. I said, I can't breathe. So we ran off the ball hospital, and they immediately put me in. And went downhill in a hurry. I was in ICU probably within a few days, and then I think it was September 9th or 10th of that year. It got so bad, my oxygen rate was way down. They said it was like 50, and I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
And basically, I've learned below 92, not good. And they said 50 is like, that's brain damage territory, Tony. And I remember getting up and going to the bathroom, and when I still could, and then things really deteriorated to the point where I was bedridden and I was on the oxygen, and I was up to about 80%, and they said the next step's going to be the ventilator. And I talked to one AD, and his name's he's up for at Central Noble. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. It's terrible. But anyway, he was telling me he made it through, and most people didn't. You got the ventilator, you're done. So I got scared. I mean, my wife was scared, and at the time, everything was isolation. So I was isolated 22 of the 24 hours a day. The only thing I had, the doctor came in, he had like a full astronaut suit on, you know, looking at me, and he's pacing back and forth, and they're giving me all this stuff and drugs and whatnot. I had so many injections of stuff in my arms that they literally had, they called the nurse expert who could, I can find a place. Right. There was nothing left. I was entirely bruised, both arms completely.
They didn't put a PICC line in? Or?
Well, they had stuff in and out, okay. But I don't know. I don't understand all that stuff, but it was just, they just kept going and going, and it was just, there was nothing left. And, you know, they're waking up constantly because they have to check you every 2-3 hours. And there was actually a camera up in the room. And I'm like, what's that camera for? And he goes, when someone dies, that's how the family watches them. Because at that time, they wouldn't let you. My family couldn't see me. My wife was furious. So luckily, you know, computers and Zoom and all that stuff, I was able to communicate with my family and some friends and stuff like that. Facebook became big. And then I started recording kind of what I was doing. I thought people might be interested in this. And I think the big thing for my wife and I, you know, it finally hit us. It's like, this isn't something that just a disease of some sort. This affects different people in different ways. Because I was pretty healthy.
Yeah.
I mean, I almost never got sick, and all of a sudden I was like, "You're close to death here, buddy." So I got through that. Long story short, they sent me home, and I had a bacteria. I didn't know it, and a week later I went back again for another 5 days. So I spent 26 days at Ball, and plenty of stories to tell about that, but we won't for brevity. But anyway, so I was glad to get that. And I was back to work in a couple months, and that took a while. I mean, when I got back to work, I think November 1st or so was my first, and I shouldn't have went back that early, but I did. I mean, just walking up the bleachers, I had to do something top. The bleachers took every ounce of energy I could get, and I had to stop and sit because I had pneumonia in all 5 lobes of my lungs. And I still have some scarring from that.
Sure.
So even with all this stuff in the hip now, I mean, if I wanted to run, I'm probably 95% normal. But for most of the stuff I do, I'm okay now. Yeah. But then you got the booster stuff going on, and like, are you going to get it again? Now nobody even talks about it.
Right.
I mean, COVID's still there somewhere, but I don't sit here and think, oh, what happens if I get it again? I'm assuming I'm immune. But that was quite the jolt. But yeah, glad to be here.
I was talking with somebody. It may have been Tommy Simpson. We were talking about COVID, and sadly, I was at Madison, and there was a few folks in the hallway. Gosh, I may edit this out. I may not, but we'll see how it flows. But there was a few people after we took the masks off. We thought, ooh, maybe we should put some masks back on.
Did you catch yourself after it was all done, like even months later, walking up to school, you're like, oh, I forgot my mask.
Where's my mask? Yeah. Yeah, I was actually, when we moved here, I opened my boxes, from moving, and I found a bunch of masks in there. And I'm like, do I keep them? Do I pitch them? What do I do? So I've hung on to them.
I have a feeling the next time nobody's going to do anything. I hope we don't have to go through that again.
Gosh, man. I hope not either. I hope no one has to. What's interesting is, when my dad passed away, I was given all the pictures and everything from our family and like journals and stuff like that. My grandmother had started journaling, and she passed away in 2000, between 2007, 2009. I can't remember the date. I'm terrible with that stuff. It's why I'm thankful for my mother-in-law and for my wife. They keep track of dates.
Right.
My mom always did that too. Found the right one, Tony. But she had journaled about how she had missed her like 7th grade year of school.
Really?
And it was due to Spanish flu. It was like the comeback of the Spanish flu.
Wow.
So she would have been, that had probably been in the 20s at some point,
wow. Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting that I was reading about it. My dad passed away in 20, and then I was reading that journal for my grandma.
Wow.
And she was talking about her 7th grade year. She had missed because of a flu outbreak.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
You probably learned a lot more about her that you ever knew too.
It's been really interesting just looking through photographs and finding out some information. I've said this multiple times. This is why this podcast has begun, because I've just had this. I've always had the urge. I want to know more. My grandpa Fox, he was a war vet, and I wish I'd asked him about his World War II experience. I was 18 when he passed. But, my grandpa Toby, I didn't know him, very well. I just have very few memories of him. But I'm actually, my Uncle Fred and Aunt Susie are going to come up in the next couple weeks. We're going to get together, and they're just going to tell me about growing up in Hartford City and in the 50s and 60s. And I'm hoping to learn a little bit about my grandpa, my grandma.
My grandmother ran in some dementia issues toward the end of her life, and she was in the home down there where the hospital used to be. And I asked her one time, I said, so what was life like growing up, or how do you meet grandpa, or we were talking about the family tree and stuff. And for 1 hour, it all snapped back, and she met, my grandpa was with a traveling circus of some weird thing, and there was Siamese twins attached, and they were in the Philippines or something weird, and he was from Minnesota. It was just weird. There was actually an Uggen Street, I think, in Alaska, but I don't know how that all plays into this. Yeah. But he drove through town and saw her walking down the street and kind of said something to her. Thought she was a nice looking lady. First time she met her. The second time he left, came back, they went on a date the second time. This was like a month or two later. The third time they got married. Third time ever met.
Wow.
And you're like, well, and you just think about this, the way life plays out, and you hear Rita said she went back and shared all this stuff, and it's just amazing. In fact, it was interesting because you brought that up. History. I had a kid, a student of mine at Northfield, just messaged me out of the blue the other day and said, you always made me think about history. So I went back and looked up my family tree, and long story short, again, his great aunt was married to the guy who wrote The Wizard of Oz. I don't even know who that is. And then he said and his last name was Gage. Lake Gage up by Lake James, that's named after one of my relatives. And I did all that because what you shared, and I thought that's pretty cool. I had an effect on somebody. And I did a project back when I was in junior high, and I admit that I failed miserably as a teacher. I said, part of the project was talk to an older relative and ask them what life was like when they were young. And they all did it on cassette tape, and they turned them all in. There was no way I could listen to all those. It was nice because they did. I gave them credit. I listened to one or two, and one of them was like, "Yeah, the Japanese were bleep 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 bleep." And it went on, but it was really fascinating. I thought, and I threw those away like 10 years ago, and I thought, what a huge mistake that was. That would have been incredible. I always thought what would be neat is to send a letter to Main Street, just somewhere, and say, if you would answer these questions, send them back, and then write a book based on what they respond. Main Street USA, name of the book. But I don't know. But that's, to me, that's fascinating. I want to know what my relatives went through, what was life like then, and someday they'll ask us probably. But that's where the journalism goes, and we're lucky now, like on Facebook with my incident with. My stuff's all there. You can't get too personal.
Right.
I think some people put way too much of their life on there, but it's just amazing the things that we miss because we just don't ask.
You're just thinking about that student, reaching out to you. It was Mr. Sutton that influenced me.
Oh, yeah.
When Coach Sutton had us thinking about generationally how far separated we were from certain events in history. And I remember that as an 8th grader, think about how old your grandpa is and then your great-grandpa, how far away from, the Civil War and even the Revolutionary War is your family,
Exactly.
It's not that far.
Exactly. Franklin Pierce's grandsons are still alive. He was president before Abraham Lincoln, Scott.
His grandsons?
1840s. His grandson is still alive. He was 70-something when he had one of the kids, and then he had one at 70. I think they're still alive. So there's two of them. This was 1840, and they were still alive. So he had it in the 1880s and 1950, and then 2020, and they're still alive. My grandpa was president. Oh, really? Yeah, Franklin Pierce. What?
Is that even possible?
Who's Franklin Pierce, first of all? Most people.
What bill is he on? Is he? You mean Benjamin Franklin?
Yeah. I saw a TikTok the other day. Name for $1. Name every president you can name. Trump. Biden.
Gosh. Ben Franklin.
Yeah,
that's Benjamin Franklin.
What about Ben Franklin? Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. He was the kite guy. That's really, and that's what it started. I was thinking the same thing. How did my parents meet? My dad was from Eaton. He didn't have anything. I mean, my dad grew up in a almost a tenement type situation. And I know
was he from the Eaton area originally?
Yeah. So, and his dad passed away and when he was in like his 20s. So my grandpa's chick, and that's been another thing that sparked this, is because the stories I was told about my grandpa's chick don't align with the photographic evidence that I found.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Really?
So the stories I've heard about how my grandma met my grandpa, like my grandpa Fox, so her second husband, who was my grandpa.
Oh, okay.
I never met my grandpa's chick. He was gone long. He died in his 40s. And, gone long before I ever was even imagined. And not that you could ever really imagine me, but
somebody did.
But I saw it. Well, they always told me I was a mistake. I was 8 years younger than my closest brother. And they're like, "Well, I saved the marriage. You're welcome." Look at that. I was a hero. For the first time in my life being born.
Wow.
No pressure.
Yeah.
But but I found pictures. So I was told that my grandpa Fox came into the picture long after my grandma and grandpa were separated and divorced, and after my grandpa Schick died.
Okay.
But then I find pictures of them together.
Really?
Like buddies. Like two guys hanging out. Think about pictures in the probably 50s of what two guys hanging out, or even the 1940s, two guys hanging out look like.
Wow.
Right? And they're standing together hanging out in the backyard. Two young men hanging out. and multiple pictures of them
Oh,
together.
sure.
So it wasn't like just one.
Wow.
So it made me question everything about it. And unfortunately, at that point, I only had one great aunt remaining on my dad's side
Okay.
that would have known anything about it. And she had dementia.
Right.
So when I asked her about my grandpa Fox and how my grandma and grandpa met, I have no idea. I have no idea.
Wow.
And there's a part of me, it's like, well, did she really have no idea, or was this just the way, that generation protected
Right.
the story?
Right.
We don't protect the story anymore.
Right. Oh, heck no.
The story's out there, and I don't know if we really can. Especially my kids' generation, your kids' generation,
Right.
they'll never be able to protect the story.
Oh, God help them.
There's no way. You just can't. There's just too much. There's too much exposure. We're exposed to so much. But anyway, so that's what kind of started this, was thinking, I want to make sure my story doesn't get confused. And, when you came in, you were
Right.
asking me about my new job, and it's already
Right.
evidently been confused because what you were told does not align with how everything went down. And
Which is why I asked.
yeah, well, and that's part of this too. It's like everybody has this story. I don't like telling other people's stories, number one, which is why I want to bring my aunt and uncle on so that I can find out from someone who was there, who
Right.
witnessed it. My dad's not here to ask anymore, and I heard about how they met, and I want to know. My dad grew up in a place where it was an apartment above a store, like a
Mhm.
5 and Dime or whatever, in Eaton, and it was this apartment. It was like 2 rooms. You had your kitchen, living room, and like 1 bedroom.
Wow.
And then down the hall, everyone shared the bathroom that lived on the floor.
Right.
That was a sink and a toilet.
Wow.
So
Dorm life.
worse than dorm life.
Yeah, I'm sure.
There wasn't even a shower.
Wow.
So they,
Oh,
the
my.
whole don't toss the baby out with the,
Right.
the water, that kind of comes into play. They had their shower was in their kitchen.
Gee.
They bring water down, but at least they had hot water, right? They didn't have to heat it up.
I think all the
outside.
things we complain about today.
Oh,
Oh,
man.
life's so horrible. It's like,
Yeah.
you don't even know.
Oh. Could we have survived the 1800s?
I don't know. I don't know.
I've asked. I had Steve Hurd on a while back, and never got published because Steve Hurd and I, the whole idea was we were going to talk about could we have survived the 1800s. So I'm saving that
really?
story for
Okay.
him.
Okay.
And we talked for 2 hours, Tony, and never got to the 1800s. Like we touched on it for 30 seconds. And we get done. I'm like, dude, I gotta end it, And then I go to edit some stuff out, and I'm like, there's some good stuff here. We just hanging out, just 2 guys
Right.
hanging out.
Yeah,
Nobody wants to listen to
exactly.
2 guys just hanging out.
You'd be
But
surprised.
I think so because I listen to other
Fascinating.
podcasts. You're right. You're 100%
I wonder if ever people think like I do. That's the thing. Or what's he thinking about?
I've thought the same thing. In fact, I was driving home from a birthday party yesterday. My nephew, great nephew, Matt Knuckles.
Okay.
So it's his sister Michelle and her husband. They had a baby, and Tucker's 2 years old. And
Okay.
I'm driving back from that baby. That baby's he's not a baby. He's a toddler. He's 2 years old. But I'm leaving there, and I'm thinking, does anybody actually listen to my podcast? And I can see numbers that they do.
Right.
But then I thought, I wonder if just some insight makes me more or less approachable.
Right. Right.
Like listening to me ramble on
Right.
makes me more or less approachable. I would think for the people that have similar thought processes as me, maybe it makes me more approachable. For those that are like, oh, I had no idea.
Yeah, exactly.
They're like, I don't think I want to talk to him anymore.
They might
Maybe
get
I'll end
something
up
to
in the
think about
seat.
that they never thought about. It's like, well,
It's possible.
There's so
Yeah.
much out there. Wow.
So that's kind of the whole purpose here is, I just like getting the story. I want to tell my story.
Right.
That's part of it too.
Right.
I want to make sure I tell my story, and I can't hear my Grandpa Schick's voice.
Right.
I'll never hear my
Yeah.
Grandpa Schick's voice. At some point, I won't. I would like to think because there's times when I hear somebody say, "Hey, get over here," and I'm like, "Oh, is that my dad?"
Right. Right.
I want to think that my voice is going to be able to be shared with my grandkids if I'm not around. You don't know
Right.
what's going to happen. I've been through some life events where I wonder, man, how fragile we really are.
Mhm.
I guess I've realized I'm immortal, not invincible.
Mhm.
And this is another way to be a little bit immortal.
Right.
My
Right.
kids, my kids don't listen. They don't listen
They
to my
will
podcast.
though eventually.
Maybe. Yeah, Addison told me we were in Savannah last week, and Addison told me, she said, I don't listen to your podcast because I feel like I'm getting a lecture.
Uh,
I said, well, yeah, kind of is. I mean, I talk to my kids kind of the same way I talk to myself, I guess.
right. That's just part of being a dad.
Right. So, hey, anyway, coaching. You've been coach. You were my coach. You were my 8th grade football coach.
What year are we talking? Where we
So
at? Where's
I
that
graduated in 92.
So 88.
80, yeah, well, it would have been 87. Fall of 87.
Okay, football.
88, and then
Yeah.
88, 89 would have been
Who was with you? Who else was in your class?
Jason Jones.
Okay, that was a fun group.
Oh,
You guys were fun.
we were winning a lot of games.
Was
We didn't lose.
Romine in that?
Romine,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
Andrew.
at Elwood, we were beat. There
Yeah.
was, what, 2 seconds to go?
Yep.
And they're kicking off to us.
Yep.
And I think Romine got it and took a knee, which I couldn't believe. So we had 1 second left. And I told Russ, Coach Sutton, I said, run the fake reverse. And we'll all scream reverse. And Romine ran it down the sideline. Oh, that's one of the most exciting.
Romine didn't run it down the sideline.
Who was it?
Jason Lytle.
Really?
We gave the ball to Jason Lytle. And I remember this because I'm getting chills thinking about it. It's one of those moments.
Fake it to Romine then.
Fake it to
That's
Romine.
why.
And when he comes out, everybody keyed on him because they
Right.
knew he was our guy.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, we had some guys. We had
Yeah.
Lytle, Jason Jones, and Romine. I mean, we had some. Man, we had some guys in there, and I know I'm forgetting someone. They're going, "What about me, Schick?" I'm
It's been
sorry.
50 years.
Yeah,
40 years.
it's been 40 at least, 35-ish.
Yeah.
But I remember Andrew talking about he comes out of that, and they're all keying on him, and he pops up and goes, "Surprise! Like I don't have it, you know." And
The whole
Jason,
team went with him. There was
Jason's
nobody.
book it.
Just
Just trucking
nobody
down.
was even close.
Right.
I remember.
Yeah, they weren't.
That's one of the greatest moments. I mean, it was just a junior high game.
Right.
But I played on because that was, you guys were the second team to be
Yep.
undefeated. I was on the first.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Ed Holcroft, Knuckles,
Yeah.
Jim, and all those guys. We didn't lose.
I didn't know Jim was on that team too.
Oh, yeah.
I never thought about that. Yeah.
My Hutton favorite best play Jim ever made is I can't remember where we were. He took a punt off the punter's foot and ran it for a touchdown.
Oh my God.
There's a picture in the newspaper. He's got it right off his foot. He was a heck of a player, and I roomed with him a year at Taylor because he was playing
That's
football
what I
at
thought.
Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we had a kid on our team named Jerome Calvert, and Jerome was like a 6-foot lanky. He had moved from like Alabama or somewhere for a year. Lanky kid. Somehow he was cousins or something with a friend of mine, Phil Tungate, and like he was just a superior athlete. Like he just fit in. But I remember he was our punter. I think he was our kickoff guy.
This high school or junior high?
No, this was in junior
He was
high.
on that team?
Yeah.
I don't remember him at
Yeah,
all.
he
That's
was here.
terrible.
I think he was here just that one year, and then he
Wow.
was gone. But I remember the number of punts he blocked that year was just tremendous. He was just so long.
Yeah, if you're that big in
getting
junior
through.
high.
Yeah, he was like 6'1" or something,
Wow.
and just lanky.
Wow.
He had probably a 7-foot wingspan. We had a lot of fun. That was a fun group, and I've shared this with a few people, but the number of times that me and Kevin Sutton or the other lineman would go up to the line and go, "Hey, what are we running?" You guys would have had a heart attack
I'm
if you
sure.
knew how many times we would look at each other and go, "It's coming. I think it's coming your way. I got this guy. You got the end. Yeah, you know
Right.
we weren't pulling or anything. We're just running, I think,
Right.
a straight wishbone most of the time. And maybe we get in an I formation. But we had no idea what was going on at
Wow.
the time. And we were still blowing people out.
Oh, yeah.
You know? So my
You're so
favorite
talented.
you brought this up, so I got to
Okay,
tell you about
yeah.
my favorite sports memory. And it's crazy that it's from, 8th grade football, but maybe that's why I was a junior high educator, is because I had so many fun memories from there. But we're at Marion, I think it was Marion McCullough, and we're killing them. I mean, we're just throttling them. It was probably 40-0 in the third quarter. And I hear on the sideline, so we had combined with Marion with Montpelier that year.
Did we practice in Montpelier the whole year?
We practiced in Montpelier.
All but one day, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
silly.
so we
I
had
was student teaching.
we had a black and a red offense. Do you remember this?
I vaguely.
So, and then there were some guys that just hadn't grown yet, right?
Right,
So
right.
junior high's tough, and some of us had hit growth spurts when we were 10, and we looked like grown men. Then there's some of the guys like me that were in between. I was a 140-pound 8th grader.
Oh
And
my!
I had eighth graders this year that were 250, like my size. I had eighth graders down in Madison that
Wow.
made me look like a just nothing. But but anyway, and I was a big guy back then.
Right.
But then there's the guys that just hadn't grown. And I remember you telling stories about you didn't grow until
I was
like,
like 80 pounds.
yeah. So we're on the sidelines or out on the field, and we hear Platt offense, get in there. And we all just kind of look, and we look over, and Coach Uggen is Platt offense, and your big booming voice. And here come these guys trucking on the field. Their helmets are like halfway on and off, and their shoulder pads are chucking around, and they're just flying. But when they got a first down,
Wow.
against Marion's number one defense. Number one, you know.
Right.
Their only defense.
Right.
And I remember we all went nuts. Like, it was like the Super Bowl for all of us to see those guys, because they put in the time, man. They were tackled. The number of times they probably were like, I'm done.
Right.
But stuck it out. And to finally get on the field, you know, and that was one of my favorite memories. And I know like names of probably half of those guys, maybe all of them at this point. I remember.
Sake of their
Yeah,
families,
well,
we will not
protect the
divulge
lives
that
of the innocent.
They're probably superheroes by now. You know how it is when you get older. Oh, we were so good back then.
They are. Like, when I see them now, they're like our size. You know, everybody grows, but
Right.
we go through that spot. That was one of my favorite memories. You guys made it a lot of fun, and you and Mr. Oberholzer.
Ed Holcroft, I think.
Holcroft was helping that year. God, man, we had so much fun. You guys just brought some energy that we needed. We had a good group. And, you know, as we went on to our freshman year, we only lost one game our freshman year. And if I remember right, we had to end up playing against Huntington North's JV, and that's who beat us.
Oh, really?
And I remember their running back stepping on me on his way through the hole. I was playing I might have been playing nose man at that point or something. And I slid over. We called some kind of stunt, and I slid over, filled a gap, and that guy literally cleated me from my legs to my helmet. He just ran me over, and we lost that game. I swear it was their JV. It had to have been. We were just, our JV team had kind of went defunct because of I'm sure it was probably grades. And most of us were all, you know, we all felt accountable in that way. But then I didn't play. I didn't play after my freshman year.
Yeah.
And I remember a couple times, and I've shared this with my 8th grade class when I was teaching, that I missed out on memories with guys that I'd played football with from the time I was 10 years old when Pee Wee started.
Right.
And I missed out on all those memories of two-a-days and the sweat and the puking and, you know, the bus rides and everything. And I always shared that because I wanted to make sure somebody else didn't do what I did and missed out on that. Right. My interest changed, but I sure could have provided something. I recall, it was actually, I remember Brian Roush coming to me and asking me if I was going to come out and play. And I said no. And I don't know what it would have took to get me to say yes.
I remember being disappointed you didn't play. I don't remember a lot about it, but I remembered that when you said that you didn't play. I thought, oh, why is he not playing?
Yeah. I wish I had. And I always shared that. You know, I wish I'd have participated in something. Because it changed maybe who I am.
Right.
You know, I mean, it ultimately made me who I am.
Right.
And enabled me to share that with students.
Right.
Boy, if I had a regret, it would be that I didn't continue playing football after my freshman year, and I was afraid I wasn't going to be on the varsity team.
Wow.
I didn't.
I was kind of the opposite. I was always a small guy, and I handed off. I was a quarterback, and over all those years, we lost. And I didn't play much my junior year because Jack Norton was all-state defensive back.
Yeah.
Well, let's make him a senior year quarterback. That was logical.
Right.
So, and he was a better athlete than I was, but still, all the 10 games we lost from 4th grade on the Raiders. We only lost one for Dalton Schroyer.
Yeah. Yep.
all those years, and my first year as a head football coach in Northfield, 0-10.
Wow.
And it's like, I can't. That was quite the tough for me because we were used to just beating people. That's just what you did. And that's why it's so hard the last few years, you know, several years at Blackford. But we're not 1,200, 1,000 kids anymore either. But I'm glad I stuck it out because I wasn't that great of a football player, I really didn't like football that much.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't a contact. I never played defense. Except, here, I'm going to toot my horn. My freshman year, we played Noblesville. We had Noblesville, who we beat in the state.
Yep.
So I think we must have knew that. We added and played them late in the year, and I was playing safety for some unknown reason. And the guy was running up the middle, and we were losing, I think, and I grabbed him, and I just jumped off the side, and I slammed him on his head. And I'm pretty sure that hitting the ground caused the fumble, but it was a fumble. And we ended up beating them, like 19 to 14 or something, which is really neat, too, because the stuff we remember, or I remember back the games, like, how do you remember that stuff? Some games I have no recollection. Other games I can tell you the semi-state disaster.
I can remember things that Mike Jones was talking to me about when I was in Pee Wee football.
Really?
Oh man, like it was yesterday. I can remember one of my first Pee Wee football practices. It's weird because I don't
remember much about Pee Wee.
I don't have like memories from when I was really young. I don't maybe two or three.
Either.
But I can remember one of my first Pee Wee football practices. I was on a team with Mike Jones was our coach, and he's my cousin, and me and Jason are second cousins, so like it was logical, right? It just made sense I was going to be on their team. One of our first practices, he had like a chalkboard out, and he puts out what the offense was going to look like, and as he goes down the line, and I'm so sorry, George, but I think you and I have had this conversation before, so I apologize if you're listening or people that know George Chrisman, but as he drew the circles, he got to George Chrisman, and he drew a big circle for George, and I think he may have called him Blimp.
Wow.
Well, what's interesting is once George left the team, I took George's spot, and I became Blimp. And I got to tell a funny story about this. This is why I do a podcast, because this stuff comes out of my mouth.
There you go.
I'm just afraid sometimes what's actually going to come out. This is a good one. So he called me Blimp, and which, you know, as a kid, I was a big, heavy kid, but I don't know that I was a blimp, but I was a kid in Pee Wee. I was a nose man, and when they hiked the ball, I just reached around and grabbed the quarterback, and I tackled both. I can recall doing that.
You had to be fairly quick.
I was a big guy. I was stronger than most kids. I had a growth spurt early, so you know I had the black tape. Man, I looked like I had a Michigan Wolverines on my helmet. I was all that, but anyway. So this goes back to Blimp. So when my mom was in the hospital, she was dying. She'd had multiple strokes, and the whole family's there, and you know my aunts, uncles, and Mike, and some other cousins, and we're sitting in a waiting room as all this is happening. And my mom was in the hospital for a month, suffering through what she had gone through, and we're sitting in a waiting room, and I look over at Mike, and I said, "Hey, Mike, I just want to let you know that." I can't believe I'm saying this almost. I may edit it, but I probably won't. But I look over at him and I said, "Hey, I want to let you know I've forgiven you for calling me Blimp when I was 10 years old, and you know till I was 12. That really affected me my whole life." And my brother Bill is sitting across the room, looking at me like, "Oh my God!" Like Bill can't believe that I'm saying it in this moment, right? And it was a tense moment, but
sure.
Listen, I was that guy that I just want to make my mom laugh. That's all I ever wanted. Like that was my goal in life, was to make my mom happy. And she's probably in heaven right now going, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're telling this story. I didn't know it." But so Mike looks at me and goes, "I'm sorry." You know, like he was just like dumbfounded that I'm bringing this up. He probably didn't even remember it.
Right. Oh, I'm sure.
And then I said, "I'm just kidding you, man." I said, "But I do remember you called me Blimp, and I thought it was hilarious when you did it to George, so I had to laugh when you did it to me." And he goes, "George Chrisman?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I called him Blimp too."
That's funny.
It's like one of my favorite stories about Pee Wee is being called Blimp, and yeah, I haven't shared that with a whole lot of people, so it's out there now. Hey, Mike.
There you go.
But I do have a lot of memories of that time, and going to camp, and I remember. Gosh, this is not what I had written down.
No,
like,
but it's
you
your
can
show.
see
You wanna
my
share your
notes.
life. Let's go.
It's my notes.
We can always come back and
so
retouch.
I'm at Ball State football camp, and I remember I was on a 40-yard.
What? How old are you?
I was going into my freshman year.
Okay.
So what? 14.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm going into my freshman year, and I go to Ball State. My dad was very supportive of me. I was so fortunate. My dad was not an athlete. He was a small guy. He was 140 pounds, I think, when he got maybe soaking wet when he got. I don't even think he weighed that when he got out of the Navy at 23, 24.
Wow.
He wasn't a big guy.
Right.
My brothers weren't like big guys. They were athletic though. I always felt like Joe and Bill were both athletic. So I'm on this 40-yard line, on the starting line for this 40-yard dash at a football camp, and here I am, freshman, going to be a freshman. I'm a lineman. I'm not a runner. I don't run. Like, thank God there's not bears chasing people all over, because there'd be some death and carnage with me shoving people down. But this guy next to me is a Ball State recruit.
Oh my!
Running back. And I remember we're lined up next to each other, and he takes off, and when he took off, it scared me.
Wow.
Just the release of him just going full out. He knows they're watching. He knows that time matters.
Right.
I'm a freshman. I'm like, number one, I got scared by the guy who just took off next to me. So I didn't take off faster than he did. And then I'm scared, so that hesitates again. And I might have ran, I don't know, probably an 8:15 or something. Right. But those are the things I remember. Yeah. And I ran across a picture the other day. If I think about it, I'll show you for relief. But I went to a Gonzo Haynes football camp. Does that ring a bell with you at all?
Gonzo Haynes.
Yeah. So I went to a Gonzo Haynes, and it was a football camp. You can see the football player on there. I looked it up online. I can't find anything Gonzo Haynes, but I don't really remember that football camp. But I remember the event of when the picture was taken, because I was on a boat with my brother. And this is back before we had social media, right? Okay. So my brother, Joe, lived up on Little Barbie, up on a channel. Yeah. And we'd go out on the boat, on his father-in-law's boat. And while we're out on the boat, he said, "Hey, I want to take a picture for Mom. Hold my beer." I've got an old Miller Lite can in my hand, and you as an AD, me as a AD, I'm like, oh God! Thank God there wasn't social media. So he hands me his old Milwaukee, and this is far enough back that it was a pull tab, not the it was a pull tab can, and he goes, "Oh wait, hold my cigarette while you're at it," and I'm holding a beer and a cigarette, and I'm like 12 years old or something, and I'm like, as an AD, if we saw that picture, it's over for that kid now. Yeah. And we were just having fun. He was just having fun, picking on me. And heck, that picture wouldn't even show up to my mom until months later when he had it developed. It wasn't like he could text it to her. But he took that picture to share with my mom, to show her what we were doing up on the boat that day. Wow. But I was, just for talking, I was thinking about that camp. Gonzo Haynes was the shirt I was wearing in that picture. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Never heard of it.
I remember it, but I don't,
Anyway, going back to my football real quick, because I can finish that little thing. I didn't really love football, but I'm glad I stuck it out and played. I enjoyed it. And when I got a senior and I was the quarterback for most of the season, except for I actually got thrown out of bounds in Muncie North, and there was a plywood covering the track, and I kicked the corner, and I could look in my leg an inch down. It was weird. They thought I'd get infected, so I sat out. This is the top times have changed. So the next week I'm sitting out, and Doug Gardner's the quarterback, sophomore, and at halftime he was, he was a sophomore. He was kind of struggling, and all of a sudden I was miraculously cured and played second half. And you're like, get in. Are you okay? I'm like, I can walk. I got a tape. It's not going to be infection. It's just the way it was. But I think it toughened me up a little bit. I've never been a guy who'd run through walls type stuff. Right. I enjoyed being with my friends. That goes back what you missed. Yep. Being with those guys, and I'm glad I did it in the long run, because obviously the early years, state championship freshman year, I wasn't anything part of that. We won 22 in a row through the sophomore year and got beat by Alec. I remember that. In fact, the guy lived on my floor at Taylor. He was on Alexandria's team. Oh, wow. So that was kind of a small tie, and so I'm glad I stuck it out. It was more baseball, and basketball was too small, but. Anyway, yeah, you're right. A lot of things pop. My wife's always like, well, how do you remember that stuff?
Just as you were talking about that, I thought about that Ball State football camp again, and I'm there and I'm wearing my Blackford stuff, and some guy comes up and he's like, Blackford High School. Blackford High School. Where's that at? It's just up the road, half hour. That's always our canned response. Just a half hour from Muncie. And he goes, Blackford just rings a bell, and I can't place it. It's won a state championship or two, back in late 70s or in 80, right?
74 and 79.
79. So he goes, let me figure it out. Next day, show up at camp. Guy hunts me down, and he's just a helper at the camp.
Right.
And he said, figured it out. Blackford Drive-In. You guys have the drive-in at Blackford. And I'm like, yeah, that's what we're known for.
Yeah.
We're known for the triple X drive-in.
That was my neighbor. It was a quarter mile from
right.
We had big patio doors in the back and a balcony in the back of our house, and when it was open,
oh my gosh,
I couldn't hear
as a kid,
verbiage, but yeah, like and everybody's, hey,
your dad's shut the door.
Yeah.
I never thought about that part.
Yeah,
that's near there. Oh my gosh,
nobody knows who it is now. They don't even know.
Not a clue.
What?
Yeah.
And so where that, whatever that place, 38, whatever, auto, yeah. But boy, hard to believe that was Hartford City, Indiana.
So we talked a little bit about the AD piece and mentioned that in there. Just seeing photographs, and I've had to suspend kids for a picture posted on social media. I'm sure
my first week at Blackford, I think, or first month at Blackford, huge party. And several big-time athletes were supposedly involved, and I spent so much time investigating, but I was hated man early in that because I think I suspended 6. And I did interviews. I mean, everybody I could. The neat thing about that story was at the end of the year when they all graduated, and I'm not going to name names. There's right. I'd like to tell, but I don't want to bring names up. But I can't think of the guy, the assistant principal at the time, bald-headed guy.
Yep, I know who you're talking about.
But anyway, we get done, and he goes, I always wondered whether we nailed them or not. And one of the 6 came out of graduation. He goes, hey, so-and-so, you're graduating now. Were you guys partying? He winks, and he walked out the door, and he goes, we got him. And we're like, yeah, high five. And so that's tough because there were parents who were friends, and I've always said, I'm not slithering the bushes trying to find, which is tough. And one of the things I kind of wanted to bring up, the hard thing is parents want discipline. They want discipline in school. They want you to be disciplined until it's their kid. Right. And now you're a problem. That's right. You're just. All I'm trying to do is do my job. I always told him. I said, we had an assistant principal. He's a baseball coach for me at Northfield. I took over for, and he was a great guy, Christian guy, disciplined guy, and he just gets so intense. And hopefully you didn't do this as an assistant principal. He just makes like just calm down. Yeah. Life's too short. But kids would go, I just can't stand that guy. I said, listen to me. If you didn't do anything wrong, this is what his day would consist of. And I put my feet up on my desk and I hunched back and I said, this is what he would be doing.
He'd have the loosest hamstrings in the building.
Because you can't follow directions and this is on you. No, I never even thought about it that way. He was a great guy. Most of them ended up liking him, and which goes to the next thing I thought the big thing about coaches that coach for me, and hopefully they got for me. And you brought it up. You kind of brought up the fact that with C High and Hoover, and it's like it's more than just sports. But to me, everything revolves around discipline. Mm-hmm. If you have discipline and you have structure and you have order, I can coach. Somebody told me a dad stopped by my house the other day and just drove by and goes, man, my son went down and helped this group trying to get him. And he said, oh, he was so frustrated. They had no attention span. And they don't at that age. And it's probably worse than what it was 30 years ago. At least we're going to say that because that's what we always do. But it's just that trying to be patient and to get them to understand. I can't coach. And I always said this, and it makes parents mad. There are kids that I can't coach. I will not coach your kid. I'm not going to coach you because you're not going to let me coach you. You can't say that about a kid. You're not going to coach him. No, there's nothing I can do until he's willing to accept what I'm trying to share here. I'll share as much as I can. I think I can make them a decent athlete. Maybe not world class, whatever, but I'll do the best I can. But If you're uncoachable, I'm not going to waste my time. That's what I said. I'm not wasting my time on somebody who doesn't want to be coached. And some don't understand that. And I'm not saying I'm writing off the kid.
Right.
But this is not school. This is, then you get back to it's a privilege to play and whatever. And like, but kids today, I think they just want to play.
Yeah.
I've had one kid in my entire career as a baseball coach, which goes back to when I was 17 years old. I helped the Babe Ruth, and I took my first team at 18. I had 6 years of Babe Ruth. Well, Dallas Hubby at Northfield, and God love the kid. He was crazy, but he was a good time. He was a good player, and he was on my state championship team and state runner-up team. And now I've lost my train of thought. Oh no, what was I going to say? I asked him. I said, I used to ask the team, how many of you? It's more important that we win as a team, or is it I just want to play? Just be honest with me. He's the only kid said and he was okay. And he started both years. He said, I just want to play. I don't care if we win or not. I thought I respect the kid for having the guts to say that. Of course, at the time you're like, oh, you got to be kidding me. But
the only one.
Funny story about him one year. No, we didn't have lights at Northfield. I shared this when I got in the Hall of Fame thing. I shared it, and somebody else tried it, and he thought it was hilarious. People laughed. We had him. I said, hey Dallas, this kind of kid he was. Why don't you go down the shed and turn the lights on? It's getting kind of dark. So he's in there looking, and he finally pops out, and we're like, hey, we don't have lights at Northfield. That's the kind of kid he was. He's kind of scatterbrained, but he's doing real well now, so I can say stuff, and he probably won't hear this anyway, but it's one of those fun moments that you remember of all the things you did, and hopefully had a good effect on kids for the most part, and he took it well.
That's all we hope. That's all we hope. It is always, that's it. Yeah. So thinking about that, and you mentioned, gosh, since you were 17, started coaching baseball.
I helped Darren Bolt's dad, Bob Bolt, First National Bank at Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
And then the next year I took over Joe's, and I had that for 6 years. And then I became the freshman baseball coach in, I want to say 88 or 89.
Were the freshmen playing at the Babe Ruth Diamond at that time?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. And Jack Norton and I were helping Pete Wiggins, and that's the year they went to semi-state. Okay. And they had a losing record.
Yeah.
Everything just that was someone, and I was the kind of the quasi pitching coach at the time, and I was whatever 22 or 3 or 4, whatever it was. And then that next year is the only year since 1982 that I have not coached baseball. 89, 90, or 90. And the only reason I didn't coach, I was going to be the freshman coach. I decided not to do, and I was out of college, and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with my life and get a job. And Bob Kemp wanted to become the freshman coach, and they had a rule that if you were in the building, you had, and I understand that, but at the time I was like, you got to be kidding me. Yeah. And that's the only year I didn't coach. And then I ended up, I even helped it in college, 88. I helped as assistant. I couldn't play my senior year because I found I was ineligible. And I had rotator cuff surgery in 86, so I missed most of my sophomore year. I think I ran bat a couple times. Then I pitched, and I had a bad arm all through college, which was tough because I was decent in high school, not great. But in my senior year, I went to Purdue out of high school and quit 2 weeks into the second semester. And I was taking 8 hours of class. So the only reason they caught it is because I didn't have 12 hours. You could take less if it's your senior year. And they asked me, he goes, did you go? Somebody looked it up. Did you go to Purdue for like 2 weeks? Yeah, you're ineligible because it counted as a semester. You have 11 semesters to get 10 in, and that was 12. And it's like if I would have took 12 hours, I would have got my whole. So I wrote this big letter to the head of the NEIA president. I'm sure he's like, what is this? And I was like, it's totally unfair because if I'd have known that, I could have sat out the fall and then played in the spring. I wouldn't have did that, but anyway, it just the whole thing was crazy. But anyway, I coached the year, helped. They made me assistant coach, a student assistant, which was funny because I'm teammates one day, and the next day I'm their coach. Yeah. Which they were like, whatever. But it was neat. He let me coach third base in a game one time. We were struggling, so I'm look like I'm 8 years old, and I'm at third. We didn't score, but it was neat that I got the coach, and then from there I got lucky and finally got on at Northfield, and that was neat because Steve Bouger. Yeah. Bouger was a head football coach at Northfield. Really? And I interviewed very poorly because I'm not a great communicator and just not me. I'm more deadpan and whatever, although I got a sense of humor. And it was a terrible interview, but Bouger knew me that I went to Blackford, so he knew that I was competitive. and he wanted, and I was a year or two older than him, but anyway, he was already there a year, and he goes, well, I want Uggen, so they put me in, and I had a second interview. Crappy again. He comes back. Where's the guy from Blackford? Oh, we're not getting him. Oh, I want him. Anyway, long story short, it goes all through, and finally, Bouger, they just gave me the job. And I don't know if I'd be in education right now. So I owed that to Steve. We were best buddies. We kind of separated for I don't know what happened over the years, but time just changes, and we went different paths. But we were together all the time at Northfield, doing all this stuff and coaching together, and we had a blast. And you can go on stories about that too. That's just funny. And it's just weird how life takes you down, like you said, with your grandpa and all that stuff. And if Steve Bouger wouldn't have been in that at that point, I don't know if I'd be in education.
Yeah.
It just turned out that he wanted me bad enough, and it worked out great. So,
wow.
Anyway,
that's crazy. He's a Jay County native.
Yeah.
Yep. I know he's over there now, but I thought he was a Jay County native.
Yep.
Interesting. So did you guys know each other before that?
No. Nope. And we lived in apartments in Wabash, and he was in the next section over, and I was either at his house or he was at mine, like every night for the entire, probably the first year or so. Then we started, girls got involved, and girlfriends and stuff. Kind of took us different ways, but yeah, it was pretty cool.
Huh. It's just really interesting.
It's a small world.
It really is. How I end up in the role I am now, working for EdFern, I worked with Ethan Harriet at the Parks Department.
Oh, really?
For a partial summer. So the Parks Department has like a parks manager that's hired on a yearly basis. And the guy that they had hired that year quit, or they got rid of him. I'm not sure what the story was, but they needed some help. And I had worked for the parks for a couple summers prior, just as like an assistant manager at one point, just as a mowing crew the summer before, just making some extra money, paying some bills. And so they called me and said, hey, our parks manager just quit. We don't need a parks manager, but we need someone to guide these kids, for the rest of the
summer.
How
old are you about this time?
Well, I was teaching, so I was 40 something.
Oh, wow. Okay.
It was just my summer gig. I was still just teaching.
Okay.
And not just teaching. I mean, nobody just teaches. Holy crap, But I was teaching at the time. I wasn't coaching. I think that might have been the year that I'd resigned from coaching softball and basketball. Okay. So I had some time in the summer. It might have been that second year. So it was probably 2017.
Okay.
Probably 2017.
Somewhere in there.
So just happens he's working on that crew that year. They needed some help to finish out the summer, and that's how we became friends. And he's much younger than me. He's
right. He's a good kid.
Yeah, great guy, great family, and through that connection, he had went on to Ivy Tech and got his degree and everything else. And I'm not sure. I think he graduated from Ball State and then started his life. Well, when I was leaving. And I know Ethan listens, so hey, Ethan, I hear you. I hear you. I remember. He had started dating who's now his wife, and I'd helped them with some electrical stuff at their house. I am not an electrician. Do not call me for electrical help on your house.
You don't even want to ask me.
I do not need to be electrocuted any more than I already have. There's probably a reason that I'm doing a podcast, and it's due to me being electrocuted and the number of concussions I've had in my life. But we became friends, and when he became the business, I think he's business manager. I'm not even sure what his title is, but I think that's what he does. When he started working for EdFern, I was working down in Madison. I was the AP down there at the junior high, and he said, "Hey, if you're ever thinking about getting out of education," so that actually there was a seed planted years before I ever came to work for him. A few years, and that's how I ended up calling them to get the furniture at Oak Hill, and then ultimately going to work for them. But it's interesting. You're saying
exactly.
those encounters we have, the people that we meet in life, and how our life changes due to that. And I'd worked with, you mentioned Jim Knuckles earlier, and I worked with Jim at Overhead Door, and that's where I met him. He was my supervisor.
That's going way back.
Yeah, so I was 18, so that was 1993, 4, somewhere in there, maybe 95. I worked there from 93 to 96.
Okay.
And then he and his sister and I started dating 95, 96, off and on, and then married in 97. But you talk about a great family. That family's been a godsend to me, and they've accepted me as one of their own, and I'm thankful for it. Who knows who Scott Schick would be today without it?
Right.
And that's
right.
I've said that repeatedly, that my wife is the reason I'm probably still alive.
Wow.
Because I was not. I was no catch. I'll say that.
Wow.
You know, but yeah. So it's just
You
fun.
bring the right people in your life.
That's right.
That's what I tell the kids when they graduate. If anything, it's like surround yourself with good people.
It's so
You do
important.
one thing: surround yourself with good people.
Thinking about all these years, biggest thing, and I know there's many. What are the changes that stick out the most? So think about 3 changes you've seen from 17 till now.
From 17,
Yeah, just as a coach.
as a coach.
I think it'd be about the game. It can be about the kids.
Well, probably the one thing that's changed, I don't want to say for the worse, it's made it more difficult, is losing the Babe Ruth.
yeah.
We talked about Russ Sutton earlier, and how he impacted my life. I was a social studies teacher, junior high, like he was, and I was coaching like he was. But losing that Babe Ruth, so for a year or two, we had nothing. And that's a kill. The big difference for me, I had great success at Northfield, and not as much as I would have liked to here, but I also knew going in that things were different. And I'm not, I always say it, and I'm sure they think, he's just knocking them again. It's like, no, it's different because they had a feeder system, and when they got to me, they pretty well understood the game, certainly had a good understanding of the rules, not everybody, but they had a good background. They had guys, I think Steve Furness and Bill Barrows and some guys that I coached against all-stars when I was younger. We always had battles with, in fact, my current wife, her brother was on a team that I coached against. I didn't know it. I coached against her brother's team years ago, and I think they went to state or just missed going to state or something like that. But we don't, without that, now we put the junior high program in, but you used to have 8, 9 teams with 12, 13. You're talking almost 100 kids. And now with junior high, I had 15 last year. So you've lost 75 kids. And then I don't know whether it's social media has, or maybe, you can't say it's the strikeout of 94 or whatever that screwed up baseball, or 84, whatever it was. But baseball, I don't want to say it's too slow, but for most kids, it's too boring.
Yeah.
You're just standing around not doing it. It's like, baseball is a lot mental. You've got to be able to stand that. And my son is a perfect example. I watched him play, and I knew he wasn't going to end up being a baseball player because he was chasing butterflies and couldn't focus on even the batter. I mean, he ended up being, and of course, by that point, we were divorced, and I didn't get a chance to work with him. That's a whole nother story. But when I worked with him, I thought he could be pretty decent, but he just didn't have that focus on that. And I think that's been a little bit different, that the kids are just, it's hands-on, go, 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 go. So that maybe that part, and then I don't know, the travel ball stuff to me has gotten almost out of hand. I was talking to somebody the other day, they're playing tons of games. I hate to think how much they're spending just to play, but are they learning anything, or is it just going to play? And that's where I waffle. And then I use the term guru. There's all these experts out there that are trying to, this is the way you're going to do it. And I think that's made it tougher for high school coaches because, number one, I've gotten older too. I look in the mirror, and the guy looking back in my head, I see the kid that was, 28 when he started, and then sometimes realize, oh, he's not 28 anymore. He's 58 now. And so he's just the old guy telling us the same spiel he's probably told everybody, and all these stories. I tend to tell a lot of stories about, well, we did this and that, and they don't care. But there's not one way to do it. Kids, this, trying to work with kids, everybody's different, and you got to find the right button to push to get that kid to do what you want him to do. And even then, it's confusing because this kid, I can really push him. I can get all over this kid, but then somebody else is melting down. It's like, why is he so hard on that kid? And he's so. The kid told me that's the only way you're going to get to me is rip me a new one. And then you got other kids, you just can't even look at them, and they're. I don't see myself as being authoritarian. I'm no Craig Moore. Or even Gary Cheeseman for that. We can't say the things that they did back in the day when they could do it and get. And I've had friends tell me, "Oh, you remember when he did?" It's like I don't remember them cussing like sailors, but I'm sure they did. My favorite Chiefs story: I was on the mound. He came out and he was just ripping me to shreds, but he was doing it through his teeth like this. And I remember some of the game is, man, Cheese was happy. What was he telling him? Like he was ripping me a new one. And that's just the way it was. And you either crumbled and oh, I can't do this, or you just got through it. And I thought it made you tougher. But today you do that, and they don't respond that way anymore. I told a kid one year, and I'm not proud of this, but it was Andy Ellsworth. We got together years later, and I think I apologized. I said, I should have told you that. I went out in the mountain. I said, why don't you grow up? And he did not like that. And Andy was a good kid, smart kid, and that I could tell it bothered him. I regretted saying that. I should apologize right then, but I was too proud back then. I'm the coach, and this. I think that's the way it was too back then. I'm the coach. This is the way it's going to be, and I'm going to do the best I can to teach you to be the best baseball player you can. It wasn't about the whole person. It wasn't about what are we molding. I want to win baseball games. I want to win. And if you do it the way I tell you, because I'm such a great coach, we're going to do it. And then you realize that doesn't work either because you're not that great. And you got to have kids with talent. That's the other biggie. You got to have kids with talent. And there's kids today in the last few years that probably think, yeah, I'm real talented. No, in the scope of things, we're not Blackford in 1975. We're one of the biggest schools in the state.
Right.
And you go up and look at the banners. 73 state runner-up, 74 state champion football, 77 baseball runner-up, 78 one-class system state runner-up, 79 state champion, 83 semi-state, 85 semi-state. You go on, and then all of a sudden, wow, we're 485.
Right.
And I know we have class now, but I don't think there's the drive that there used to be. I mean, I don't ever feel like needing Cheeseman to tell us to work hard. I'm not going to say now football, I wouldn't say that. I didn't work out or I didn't go to summer workouts. I wanted a break. I wanted to be with my girlfriend at the time or whatever. I just need to get away from it. But baseball, like, man, as soon as football was over, we were ready that Monday. We were lifting, throwing, which was funny for me because I didn't really live. By senior year, I finally took it serious. And we just wanted to win so bad. It was like you're going, and we were always decent, our class, like yours was talented. And there are some kids, I think they want to be good, and there's some I think that, I want to say think that they're, I'm not trying to knock anybody, but it's just a different mindset. And maybe it's just not important in the grand scheme of things today.
I have a couple thoughts on that.
Yeah,
I just want to throw them at you. First thought is, and I've coached travel. My kid, Addison, she was involved in travel softball, and thinking back what you mentioned about your son, my youngest, Jocelyn, she was really talented. The game was too slow for her. Yeah. She played basketball and soccer, ran track, and those games you're going.
Oh yeah.
Softball is a lot of downtime to go pick the fertilizer out of the outfield.
Yeah.
But just thinking about you're talking about travel. They play so many games that I don't think each game becomes important.
Losing's not a big deal,
right?
Because we're going to play in 2 hours. Yeah,
I think that's some of it. I'm like you. My brain runs.
No, you're fine.
Just thinking about how we also don't have that community connection we had at one time either. It meant something for me to be Brute. When I was Brute, it meant something to me, and I felt like I had an obligation to be the Brute that I remember when I was a kid. Be as good as him, and to be as good as Chris McKay was when I was a freshman, and watching him, and as Chad Terry was, and Scott Blakely was Brute, and I had an obligation to outdo them, or at least do them right. So on that side of it, I think about, do we still have that? Do we still have that community sense that I felt like, and it was coached into me. Our coaches at that time would talk to us about, you're representing Blackford schools, and as a Brute, I was the physical incarnation of who we all are, and I know we were all told that as cheerleaders, and I know my friends had it as well as football and baseball and basketball players and volleyball and everything else. I felt like there was a sense of community pride putting on something that said Blackford schools on it. And it meant something because that was the only option. is what I'm
Right.
thinking now as
Yeah.
a 49-year-old man who's had kids come through. And my daughter's been, Addison has told me, Dad, I just didn't have a whole lot of school pride. I wasn't all rah rah, got to be Blackford. And, coming from my wife, who is rah rah Blackford, I talked about taking my youngest daughter out of Blackford sports at one time and going and playing over at Upland in a rec league.
Right.
She was like, that's not happening. Not happening on my watch.
Wow.
I mean, that's like, so my kids come from that. But, and I haven't ever really talked to Jocelyn about it to see where she's at. But Addison's been very clear. She's like, I just wasn't all rah rah Blackford Bruins.
Thing too. That'd be another one that popped up. And it's kind of touchy. I got to be careful. The number of players that were decent baseball players since I've been here who didn't play at Blackford. That's frustrating. And some had the legitimate, perfectly good excuses. Tony, it's not you. It's not you. Well, I still take it personal.
Sure.
No, if you really cared, in my opinion, and it goes back to what you said. And the one thing that was neat, we won the sectional in 17 with a team that was, they were great kids. I don't think they were world beaters, but everything fell into place. And it came down the last strike even. And we rallied and we beat them because of the pitching rules and all that. But for that, I'm getting chills, like you said earlier. The number of people from the community that showed up for that sectional, that was Blackford back. And it was for a fleeting moment, and then we went right back to whatever. But you're right. It's just, but here's something I didn't think till later in life that really hit me. We had our 40-year reunion. I didn't go, but it was last weekend. So in 2023, that was 1983. So if I'm talking about 1983, now let's put us back in our day, 1983. That's 1943.
That's right.
I could have cared less what happened in 1943. Roosevelt's president. What? You see what it's like? So all of these stories that we have fresh and all these stuff we're talking about, and they don't care. They don't care. But it's still, to me, and I came back, they brought me back from after I won state Norfolk, they brought me back to be a speaker at that preseason thing they did with a kind of a, what they call those things. They brought the whole school in, and I was a speaker. Pep session type to get the year or jumpstart the year. And I remember running around, I was pointing at the banners. Look at that. Look what's up there. Look at the history. For a few minutes. And one kid even ran out afterward. Man, you got me so excited. I'm playing football. And I'm sure he didn't in the end. But that's why I played football. I wanted to be the quarterback of the Blackford Bruins. When I was a kid, I was in my yard listening to the radio, the Bruins playing. I cried when they lost, when they got beaten in semi-state by Connorsville or whoever, LaPorte or whoever that beat them. And I'm throwing the ball. I'm Phil Payne. I'm Bill Johnson. I'm playing in my underwear, Nerf in my thing. I'm Orrin Bargerhoff and Ron Trosper and all these guys. Nobody has a clue they are now. It's like, that's what I wanted to be. And I wanted to be state champs. I wanted to be that first guy to do it because that's what Bruins did. I was glad we got the semi-state and all that stuff. But now this last 10 years, except for that sectional, we've lost our first game of sectional every year, 8 out of 9 years. And it's just, gosh, we should. But we're also on a pretty tough sectional. I mean, it's been tough. We've had the draw of pretty much the best teams, I think, almost every year except that one year we were sectional. But that's not an excuse. But I think about, too, realistically, in 1970s, I would have been fired after. I wouldn't even won sectional. I got fired after 3 years because we won 4 games that second year and 8. Mind you, I'd won 22 in a year on average for 12 years. And I knew it was coming. I had a guy tell me, he said, you're going to ruin your Hall of Fame chances if you come to Blackford. And I always say this, and again, not knocking people, but they knew where it was going. There just wasn't a lot of kids playing sports back in, had been 15 and 16, 14 to 16 range. I mean, the basketball where it got 1 and 71, all that stuff. But like you said, I think Jake Ross, I say, Jake, I don't understand. We won the sectional. The next year we were like 10 and 18. It's like, what happened? The whole team was back. To this day, that's the only team in my history of coaching that I don't understand what happened. I don't know where life hit him. It just occurred to him. It's like, oh, I got to worry about life. But Jake, I remember I met Jake, and he was a junior, I think, that year, and that happened. He's like, Coach, you got to understand something. We never won anything our entire lives. Nothing.
Right.
And it's like, I can't process that. Well, you can't process that. We're talking about, we lost 10 games our whole career. And they're 71 out of 72. But God love them for hanging in there, and we got through it. And we've had some decent years. And of course, the COVID year, where I had the whole team back, and Herds, Peyton was great, and Mealy and all those guys, and Strobel, we were loaded, and we don't play it.
Right.
And you're like, that would have changed things, but a lot of other schools said the same thing. But life happens.
That was an anomaly class. That group of
They were
boys,
good.
and there were girls in that class as well. There was just a lot of them.
A lot of good athletes.
I
Tori
remember-
Baker, I remember.
Yeah,
I think that's that ballpark range, or is she older than that?
she's a year older.
Okay.
That group of kids, there were I think 160 of them, and I had all of them in my social studies class.
Wow.
And, man, there was a lot of seats, and a lot of classes, 6 classes. And many of them had 33, 35. And I remember that group of kids, they would come in fifth period and there was only like 18. And I'd look around and I go, where's everybody at?
Yeah.
And they go, this is it, Mr. Schick. I mean, we're still doing this.
Wow. So I'll put you on a spot, administrator. What's the ideal class size? Size don't matter. 30
classroom?
Yeah.
I told my counselor at Oak Hill I didn't want to see anything bigger than 24. And we had a couple that got bigger than that. No, granted, we were very blessed over there to have have the numbers aligned for that. But yeah, 24 I think is where I wanted to see it max out at. And we had some 27s.
It'd be great to have 18, 20. The best class I ever had, my first year at Northfield, second hour class had 11.
Oh my God.
I'm pretty sure it's 11 or 13.
That might be tougher.
And I thought it was fun because it was
first
small.
period?
It was second.
Okay.
So like first would have been more challenge. I was always first hour was always tough because I taught the same thing all day long.
Yeah.
You were U.S. history, 5 days, exact same thing.
Yeah.
So second one pretty decent. Third rolling, fourth, five, go. And I was a note guy back in the day.
Oh yeah.
Get out your notes, and I'd write the whole hour like Mr. Uggen.
I was a lecturer. It was all story based. Imagine that. But that group of 18, we would burn through my lesson. And I felt terrible. And plus, they were a group of kids that were like in band and like advanced English, and they were the more advanced kids. And I think they ended up being pigeonholed into that class because of the other things they were in. So they all just happened to be pretty high, high ability kids, not high ability, but high achievers.
Right.
And so we would burn through stuff, and we had to get creative, but it was fun. And I don't know. Yeah, I would say 24. That's what we talked about when I was at Oak Hill. And it's tough to do. Very fortunate there to where we had the student numbers and teacher availability that aligned to do that most of the day. What was interesting is because we shared a few teachers with the high school that we would have one semester, it would be 7th grade would have a couple heavy classes. Next semester it was 8th grade that had some heavier classes.
Give them a break.
Seasoned educators, it doesn't matter if you got 15 or 33. They're gonna kill it either way. And I'm very blessed over there. And everywhere I've been, I've worked with some great teachers, and very few I can count on one hand. Don't even need all the fingers of teachers where I thought probably not that's probably not the best spot for you. You know?
Right.
And I say that as both a teacher and as an administrator and as a parent. I'm just thinking to myself, would I want my kid in that class?
Right.
There's maybe 3 where I'm like, probably just not the best fit for you.
Right.
And, some of them, it was their first year. Some of them, it was, their second, third. I had a couple that were a little bit more seasoned where I'm like, maybe they just lost their love for it,
Right.
I'm a passion guy. You know that. I've always been. I burn pretty hot.
Right.
I always tried to use that to my advantage when I would go in and talk to teachers about their evaluations, things like that. What are you passionate about?
Right.
Why aren't you doing more of that?
Right.
I saw a couple teachers teaching things that they were very passionate about, and they're just on fire, and the whole classroom's on fire because of it. And the kids see it. They sense. I was talking to Hal Bowman about it last week, and they know. The kids know. They know when you're in love with what you're doing and love what you're teaching, what you're coaching, whatever. And there's just a whole new sense, man. They've got spidey senses.
Well, in a TikTok video, the long-haired kid, he's in a class, and he's like, "Why don't you teach us something?"
I love that video.
I know. At first, you're kind of like, "Man, that's written." And you realize what he's saying, And you had to listen to it a second time. You're like, oh, she's not
The
very
number of
good.
times that kid thought about that in his head,
Yeah.
sitting in that classroom, for him to say it and articulate it the way he did.
Right.
I love that
Brilliant.
video.
It was brilliant.
It was, and it was timed. Like he nailed it, and that teacher just sat there.
Yeah.
Come on,
Just
man.
go. Get out
That's
of
what
here.
I'm talking about. You don't need to be there.
No.
You don't need to be there, and it's unfortunate. We're in a tough situation where teachers and administrators are leaving. I'm one of them. You know,
Right.
we have some that are retiring. You retired, and
Yeah.
others that are coming in that that have some great life experience. And I was one of those too. I had some great life experience behind me, and I was passionate about what I did. And
Right.
you know, we're in a tough spot with teaching. I think we were talking earlier. I replaced 13 people in a staff of 23, and some of those were repeats. But
We've become too structured. Of we got to hit. It seemed like yours was more taught. I taught what I wanted to teach back in the day, and now all of a sudden it became, I need to know exactly what your lesson plans for every single thing. From it's like, just let me teach my class.
you guys share your data. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, we're gonna share data next month. You're the person. You're gonna get in front of everybody and tell them what you're doing in your social studies
Stress
class
them out even
to-
more.
to
People
help with our math and language arts scores.
Right.
Hey, I'm a team player, and I stood up, man. I did everything I could to help out, and felt like I was a very effective teacher. Would I rate me as highly effective? I don't know. If I was the administrator in there, I was rated highly effective, but I don't know that me as an administrator would have. My teaching style was relational, and everything I've done has been relational, and I've
You
talked
get along
about
there,
that a
buddy.
bit. I try. I'm not trying to make enemies. I'm not trying to make people mad. I've realized early on that the whole. I think early on I called it, you get more bees with honey, but it's true.
Right.
If I like you, if I respect you, if I trust you, and you've shown me reasons to have all those feelings about you over time,
Right.
then I'm going to learn from you. And
Right.
and you're one of those people where you are very consistent in your life,
Right.
and the things you say and the things you do, and it's why people follow you. It's why people believe in you. It's why you were able to overcome some early stuff
Right.
as AD
Right.
and coaching. When
Right.
you came to Blackford, you'd already proven, hey, I'm a winner. I can get through this, and people followed you because of that. Were they happy with it all the time?
Oh, I'm
Well,
sure not.
I can tell you as a parent, I wasn't always happy with it, but
right.
I trusted you.
Right.
And I wasn't worried about, is my kid going to have an athletic director that's going to be unfair or not going to care?
Right. Right.
And I think
right.
that's huge. I think that's a huge piece that we are worried about. I was talking to Hal Bone about the same thing last week, that we live in a time now where everything's transparent.
Yeah.
We didn't know that Roosevelt was in a wheelchair.
Right.
Yeah,
exactly.
They were able to hide it.
Yeah.
You didn't know that Lincoln had been kicked in the face by a horse as a kid. Looked at him and thought, what the heck? He'd been kicked in the face by a horse? But you didn't know it. You didn't know these things about people, and you didn't question them
Right.
because the information wasn't available.
Right.
And now information is so easily attained. And whether it's real or fake,
That's the
I don't
problem.
get political here.
Right. Right.
But is it legitimate information, or is it just somebody telling a story?
Exactly.
And I hate that idea that it's somebody telling a story and someone gets their life, potentially their whole life can be derailed
Right.
over a story.
Right.
Man, and I've watched it happen to a great friend of mine, and it burns me to the core to watch someone be dismantled publicly over a story
Wow.
that just wasn't true, and their whole life
Changes.
is derailed,
Really?
worse than derailed.
Wow.
So it's sickening, and but it's one of those things. It's those events you run into in life and how quickly they can change us. And, we're talking about participation, number of kids. Just watching that participation drop.
Lowest number of kids I've had. We barely had a JV. We only played 5 games, I think. The one thing I will say, and going back kind of the way I was talking about it, because there's some things that changed from the positive. I've been really thrilled for the most part, of my kids wanting to learn and get better. I think they're starting. I don't know where it's just that trust you're talking about. Maybe he knows what he's talking about, whatever. Or maybe I'm doing a better job trying to really. I'm not I'm not a huggy feely. I love you, man. I've never understood coaches. I love you, man. I did. That's just not me. See how I can do it? He's hugging.
Yep.
I actually hugged my seniors this year at the thing. I'm sure they were like, "What is he doing?" In fact, Gabe Foster hugged me last year. Coach, I am going to hug you. And
I
he
love
did.
Gabe.
And
I'm
I know he's
a
a great
Gabe
guy.
fan, man.
Exactly. I wish I knew what he was doing. I should text him, find out what he's up to, but I'm almost afraid to ask. But I've got kids I think who care and they want to be better. We just don't have that huge talent. But I had a fun group this year for the most part. But what was tough about not having the numbers, Cody Jones, I'll just throw him out there. Cody Jones decided to come out because I basically put the thing out. If we don't have 18 guys, we cannot play JV. And you know how hard it is with 18 anyway.
Yeah.
And one guy was injured most of the year, so we couldn't play because I can't spare varsity guys because we played 30 games or 28 games. And he finally came out. We played a few at the end, and some of those kids, you know, they had to wait a month just to play because they weren't good enough to play JV, but they stuck with it. I hope they stick it out. And then going the opposite, the year before, we had some kids that were a little bit older who decided not to come out. And that's where it's tough. It's like, gosh, you guys not playing. These guys may not get to play because you're not gonna. And that's that. You know, there's no I in team thing, and I would say, well, me's in there, but nevertheless, but kids have to decide. You know, it's easy for me to say, well, don't be a quitter. Well, when things got tough in Florida, when I moved down there, I left the next week. So I guess technically I'm a quitter. You know, I say things happen in life where you have to make choices. What's best for them? So I get it. I'm not mad at those kids per se, or I'm not mad at the kid, you know, that moved away and didn't play. But it's tough because, like, gosh, what would we be now if they'd have stayed? And what if all these kids along the way would have just stuck with it, or the ones that, well, I'm not getting to do what I do. Well, you're going to be better the next year.
Right.
And in 2 years, when you're a senior, you're going to be stud. But they never let themselves get to that point for whatever reason. That's hard. And there's nothing like, you know, you can try to say, and you encourage your telling short. Well, I remember I had this kid, he didn't. They don't care. You hope it maybe affects a couple along the way. But anyway, so I one of the things that somebody says, are you glad, or do you regret leaving Northfield? No. I think my time was over. Yeah, and as good as it was, you get to a certain point where what else is there to accomplish? Won 2 state championships, state runner-up, and we won 7, 8 sectionals, 4 in a row at the end there, and they won it the year after I left. So guess what? Didn't need me either.
That's right.
They still won it, and that's the other thing. It's hard, you know, when you talk about all this stuff, and we're done, somebody replaces, and life goes on. But I don't know what has to do with this conversation, but that's one of those real life hitters. Like, the world will function without you.
It will.
But you hope you contribute something. I mean, I appreciate what you said earlier about stuff. And I always think with you, changing the subject totally different, is I think, man, maybe with the courage and the patience to be a repo man like you did, you could probably handle anything in education.
I don't know.
That would be I don't know if you've shared much about that or not.
No.
Maybe another time.
It'll come up, I'm sure. But I remember thinking that, you know, that had jaded me, it toughened me up, and but kids are different.
Yeah,
you're dealing with lives, you know.
There's a lot happening to kids today that's we didn't have to deal with, and I think I don't want to throw it all on social media, but I'm not so sure that's. It seems like it's stressing people. We compare everybody to everything. I got to be this. I got to be that. It's like, no.
But I felt that. I felt that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I felt I had expectations to live up to.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that a lot. I've thought about that, especially as a teacher and administrator and as a coach. You know, what are these kids going through that I don't see, and how can I help them through it? You know,
right.
And so you were talking about you're not a lover like a
touchy
feely lover. You know, that sounds weird, right? Yeah,
and it's different. You see families that are just loving. You're like, sometimes you wish you're like that, but it's like we get. My mom said it best. She goes, you know, we live 5 miles apart, and we see her once a month or something. You know, I still love you.
That's right.
So yeah, I know.
That's it. That's 100% it. Yeah. And I think every family is going to be different coming through that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I don't know. You know, think about that kid that he don't want to hug.
Right.
You know, that kid does not want to hug. He don't even want a high five.
Right.
He just every once in a while wants you to go, hey, appreciated you, or how much just that
Right.
one little token line of you had a great game today,
Right.
and how that could change the course of their life. Because maybe it's the first time they heard it. As a teacher, I would always tell and as an administrator, always told my kids I loved them, always, always. And part of that was, number one, I wanted them to know that someone did,
Right.
and there was probably somebody in there that needed to hear it.
Right.
And I can remember a student coming to me, it's maybe year 4 or 5 into me teaching, and they said, "Thank you," and I was like, "For
Right.
what?" Because for me, it was a regular thing,
Right.
and they said, "You're the first adults ever told me that they love me."
Wow.
I'm like, "Wow."
Wow.
So you talk about, I
Right.
can be tough as I want to be, standing in an
Right.
alley at 2:30 in the morning in the wrong side of South Bend, but that means absolutely nothing when that kid said that to me, and
Right.
that was a life changer. It's like, holy crap, I really am making an impact.
Right.
You
Right.
question that. All of us question. I think at some point you
Right.
realize everything I do today.
Well,
is
it's those
going to
notes, like you said, you get one every once in a while out of the blue. Coach, I never understood what you were talking about until last week. And you're like, well, good for you. That's all. I'm glad I had an effect on you.
That's it.
Those are the neatest things because it makes you feel better about it. Because you don't get, in that situation you were in, you don't get a lot of pats on the ADs, don't get pat on, hey, great job, because you just go about your business.
Yeah.
If you don't hear anything, you're probably doing a good job. But if you expect somebody to tell you you're doing great, it ain't going to happen,
Yeah.
which is always tough too. You know nobody's ever going to tell you. Why can't they just once?
That's all I
Say,
need. That'll fill my cup, man.
That's what's neat about being groundskeeper now, because the field looks nice, and they'll, hey, the field looks great.
That's right.
Good, that's nice.
So hey, to all our ADs out there, hey, great job getting officiating filled up this year.
Oh, here we go.
Did you want me to get on that one? Or did you
Yeah,
want me to
I
stay on
think that's
that
a
one?
good thing. I brought that up several times, and I put it in the social media stuff. It's like, if we don't lay off officials, and you get in there. I watch these. I don't even know why I watch this YouTube shorts and all
hard.
that stuff, but I kind of want to get a feel for what's going on in the world and what am I dealing with. And it's like, no, I'm not dealing. I became an official last year, and for football only as a backup in case we got to help Scott out if something happened. I got that. I got my baseball license. Then I had my hip surgery, and I couldn't do that. But I decided to go down to youth football in town, and I'll do a game and help them out on the weekend. My 6th quarter of being a youth football official, the other official called a flag on something that's the other team, I'm not going to say where, threw a fit. Before everything was said and done, we were on a delay for about 15 to 20 minutes waiting on the police to show up to escort them from the field. My 6th quarter of being a youth football official. And the one parent, the female, walked behind their bench, cussed us out behind their team from the field, and I didn't do anything. I'm just standing there. There's only 2 of us, and you go, you bleepity bleeps, you screwed us, bleep bleep bleep. And even their fans were like, oh, come on. And finally a guy came over like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know. So I think he was an AD. I'm like, you probably should have handled that then. But he was probably like everybody else, like, what's happening?
Right.
And finally, they took 3 police officers. The first one was trying, and they finally got him to leave. And I'm like, Lee, is this even about the kids anymore? Really? We're all living through our kids. And
I was a terrible parent. I was a terrible.
Well, I didn't
parent.
understand it until my son played football, and he was terrible, and he would admit that. And he played safety because they could get him on the field, and he touched somebody. Maybe that goes back to the lovey-feely thing. One time in his 2 years, I think he played football, and he was the only kid didn't play offense. And I went up to the coach. I said, I really appreciate what you're doing. I get my son's not very good. I understand that totally. He said, but I understand why he didn't play offense. Because he's going to figure it out.
Right.
I'm no good. I'm the only one, and he's going to quit the sport. He said, you do realize your kid's in practice laying on the ground in fetal position crying because, yeah, I get that. But I'm watching their kids. You don't throw it. He just runs down the field. So the next game, he plays 3 plays on offense, 2 of which they score touchdowns. And my son has nothing to do with it, but he ran down the field, and a guy ran after him because they don't know he's not any good. And my son quit football the next year. And that was, but I understood why people get frightened. They just want to see their kid be a part and play. And that's the toughest thing for me about being a coach, is knowing you have kids that are the nicest kids. I had one this year, Derek Kelly, God love that kid. He worked as hard as anybody and probably was at more practice than anybody. But he would be the first to tell you he's not as talented as the other kids. But you want to try to get them on there. But then when you get in those tough games, you just like, I just can't. I can't get him out there. And then you get to that conversation. It's like, well, we're losing anyway. So what makes a difference with kids? Like, well, you don't want to get in that discussion with these guys.
Right.
At least it's 0-0 to begin with. We have chance. If I start with this group, we're going to be down 15-0 so fast. That ain't going to be any fun either. And then at what point do we, kids earn the right to play based on what they do and all that stuff, and that's hard. But it's no fun because I want those kids to play, and you got to have them.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have a team. And there's years where that's all you have.
That's right.
And you just go to about the year we were 4-23. Man, that was tough. The next year we were 8-21, but those kids lost 10 games by 2 runs or less. That was one of the most fun years we ever had. On paper, it was a disaster. In reality, and then the next year they won the sectional, and you're like, how did that happen? But even that 4-23, we worked to this point, and we got those kids to do what we needed enough, and things fell in the right place, and it happened. But I've had parents, we're getting away from the officiating, but it's kind of the same thing, line themselves up with me as I'm watching the batter to make sure that they see the arms crossed, and I'm like, what are you doing? And years ago, it's like, well, your kids are never going to play now. Well, that's not fair. It's not the kid's fault parents doing that.
That's exactly right.
But usually they're the same ones screaming at the officials too. But they're getting out. I'm looking at the official. I think it was average was 55 age, and I'm 58. I just got in there, and I'm older than the average. And in 10 years, where are we going to be? I saw a guy get punched in the head at a Little League game on one of those videos I watched. I watched somebody else get threatened. Then the guy in Texas got shot. That NFL player's brother shot somebody. Yep. I'm like, that's what it's got to? Over a 9-year-old football game? It's that critical. I'm going to kill you for screwing up my kid's life. It's like, oh, man. And it makes you wonder, is it time to get out before I get shot for doing something stupid? I mean,
you don't want to even think that.
Yeah, I know. We're laughing now.
How can you not? You know? I mean, I chuckle, but I'm like, holy crap. I've had parents just ream me, as in a winning situation.
Right. Right.
It's like, what the heck? Seriously? I mean, okay, so I held him up a base. You realize we just scored 12 runs this inning.
Right.
You
play me. And we had that basketball game. We scored 100, and the coach made a mistake. He forgot to have a bench, so he had nobody to put in. And then having the girls' game, they were mad because I said something. I said, I don't want to see 90-8.
Yeah.
There's no reason for that. And that's ridiculous. You play. What is to be gained by that?
And I've been on the other end of that so many times.
Football, when we were in Northfield, we got beat 70, whatever, guys. And then the one coach, he just flat out said, well, my kids, they're trying to be all-state. I'm like, you're 250 yards rushing against maybe the worst football team in the history of mankind, or certainly in bottom 10 in Indiana. What does that mean?
Right.
I mean, let some other kid. But I've never felt like I've stopped guys. I've had a cost. This year we had a game where we could have easily won 10-run rule. I called off the dogs. It was 11. The coach was a great friend of mine and hadn't coached against him in years. Like, I'm not running up on this guy. And they ended up getting back. We had to play 2 extra innings. And then you're thinking, well, I just burnt 2 innings. But no, I did the right thing.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. But I don't care. You do it to me, I don't care. Don't say anything. If you beat me 30-0, you go right ahead. If that's what you think's necessary, because we're going to learn how to deal with adversity. Things happen in life. You're not happy with it. You learn how to get through it. But
I coached the same group of girls from 4th grade through 8th grade. And in that span, we may have won 4 games. And we got throttled every game. But we got better every game. And, it's just a continuation of talking to the kids about, we have to get better. And you have to consciously decide that you're going to look at, and we knew we were going to get beat. I mean, in our heads, we were competing against our last best selves, and that's the mentality I was trying to teach them. And I think I did that. I feel like I did that. I hope I did that. And I would get comments made to me from other teams. Oh my God, you guys got so much better this time or that time. And I'm like, hey, I appreciate that. It's got a long ways to go. We didn't have anybody could score. Heck, when we first started playing together, nobody could dribble.
Wow.
You can't dribble. No one. You know, I remember asking one of the coaches, I said, or one of the parents who happened to be a coach, I said, you know, sorry, man. And he's like, oh, don't worry, I'm sitting up in the bleachers and I'm criticizing every decision you make. And he said it, tongue in cheek.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, I felt better about it then.
Yeah,
And
right.
then, he realized what I was battling against, but it wasn't for the lack of trying.
Right.
That group of girls worked so hard.
Those are maybe the more rewarding seasons, but you have to be able to take the winning, losing out of your head, because all you see is a coach. God, I'm 5-17 right now. What? Nobody cares.
We didn't get to say 5-17.
Oh yeah, well, even whatever. Yeah.
I mean, we were 1 and.
But if you lose by 6, and people are like, "Why are they so excited?" It's like they just played great. And some of the best games ever coached were losses.
Right. We played a Muncie team one night, and it was competitive to the last minute. I mean, we were in it, and it was one of those things. We were playing at the Hartford City Junior High gym, and that gym was so small. So if you could press and you had a decent press, it's effective in there. And so that's all we ever did. We pressed every possession.
That team that couldn't dribble.
Team that couldn't dribble.
Well, you wouldn't have dribbles far because you're there.
Defensively, we pressed every time. We had a drill that actually got us to where we get the ball across half court, because teams would just start pressing us. They run it up 30-0, and then you can't press, and then we would get the ball across half court, and they would take the ball away from us immediately and go score. But that group of girls worked so hard, and I was so proud of them for not quitting. Like they did not have quit in them. And some of them went on and played all the way through high school, and dealt with it all the way through high school as well. And I was so proud of them for that. And I hope that taught them something. The same thing you're saying, taught them something about who they were as a person. That they weren't quitters. That they could overcome anything. Beat me down. I'm going to keep getting back up.
You just have that look in the mirror. If you can tell that person you played as hard as you can, then I've done my job and you've done yours. I don't use that too much anymore, but I wish I did, because we use all those cliches. And
we had a practice one day, and I decided that day that they were going to get a lesson on cutting corners. That was the day. Like, we weren't good enough to cut any corner, no matter where it was, when it was, or what it was. So, get through with our dynamic warm-up, and I have them run a couple laps, just, get loose, and I'm watching them cut a corner around that gym at the junior high here in Hartford City. Man, there's not a corner that you can't cut. You have to. But I'm watching them, and they're cutting the corner. And I didn't tell them what the day was about. I was going to make them figure it out. And so they get done with that first 2 laps. I said, hey, keep going. And I just turned around and started talking to Gary Roten. We're just chit-chatting. And he's like, what are you doing? I said, they're not going to cut corners anymore. Any corner. None. So he's like, okay. They run another lap. They come around. They kind of look at me. And I said, keep going. Now they're starting to question, what did we do? And finally, it was probably about 4, maybe 6 laps in. Grace Marshall yells, no cutting corners. You should realize that I was watching every corner. Like, I would ignore and then just watching the corners. That's all I was doing. And they ran 1 lap. No one cut a corner. We got back in. All right, let's get going.
Wow.
And they just figured it out. And then I talked to them right after that. And I said, ladies, we are not good enough to cut a corner. Whether it's in here, whether it's out there, it's at the next game or anywhere else, we can't cut corners. We're just not good enough. We have to eliminate cutting corners. If we can do that, we'll get a little bit better. And, we did. We won a game that year, and we'd actually practiced that. We practiced what it was going to look like, because we had seen teams beat us that weren't very good and hadn't won many games, and they would go bananas. The crowd would go bananas. They would go bananas, and they forgot about the handshake line. And I said, we're not going to be that team. And so we talked about, we were getting ready to play, and it was Elwood, and they had a couple athletes on that team, but they were kind of in the same boat we were. We had a chance to win, and we go over there, and we had practiced what it looked like after you win, because we'd never won. So we had to practice that. And we practiced how you're going to handshake and you're going to say, great game. great game to every kid. And when you shake that hand, you look them in the eye and say, great game. And so they're going down through the line. And we'd done that.
Right,
they were
right,
good at
right.
it. But I wanted to make sure that when we beat them,
Right.
that we did it again.
That's
That we were
pretty good.
consistent. So we're going down through the line. And I'm watching every girl. Good game. Good game. Good game. And I get down to the end. The coach is like, hey, man, thanks. And I'm, hey, great game.
Right.
It's got to be one of us, right?
Right.
And so they all go into the locker room. And it was the conversation we'd had prior to that game was that locker door shuts before one person yells.
Right.
And that locker door shut, and you can hear it in there. Ah, they're going bananas. It was one of the girls' birthdays, so there's birthday cake in there, and it's everywhere. They cleaned up, Coach. Don't worry.
Thank goodness.
And they just celebrated.
Yeah.
But then what was awesome was there was a girl on that 8th grade team, or it must have been 7th grade year, because we came out and sat with a girl from that Elwood team that we'd beat. It was her birthday as well, and we sat with her.
Wow.
And celebrated her birthday with her too.
That's cool.
It's just one of those things. I want to make sure they knew when we're done competing,
Right.
just like them.
Right.
No different. And I think sometimes that gets translated well. I was very blessed because I had that group of kids for so many years.
Right.
As a softball coach, I came in, I had a group that was, I would say, a little dysfunctional because some of them had played, some of them hadn't played for various reasons.
Right.
And I came into a group of I think I had 10 seniors my first year.
Right.
And all of them were players. Man, I love that group of kids. They were all had great qualities in their own right. But as a team, they hadn't played together.
Right.
It was very difficult. I had such high hopes because there were some great kids, some great parents. That could have been a wonderful team had we had time together and them have time together as a team.
Right.
They just didn't have it.
Yeah.
It was very difficult.
That's hard.
And a little bit of shell shock going from, I coached junior high basketball to coaching varsity softball, and our softball team had some success for many years out there prior to me coming in, and a couple other coaches, but it's tough. And I was like, I remember coming to you, and you were out working on your baseball field, and I'm like, I'm done, dude. That was a lot. That was a lot. I'm not ready for that.
Yeah.
I don't need that in my life right now.
Sometimes it takes years. How long you do it?
2 years, just 2 years.
There was a coach in the conference this year that said, we were just kind of talking at the end. We had our selection meeting, and we were just kind of talking. He's like, I had some parents writing me. And I don't know if I can do this. I just stick with it for 4 years. Yeah. It takes minimal 3, probably 4. And it depends on where you get support from your administration too. I don't know, every school's different, but I said, they got to understand over time that this guy ain't changing.
Yeah.
Isn't changing. This is the way it's going to be done. He's going to expect, and I think that's what's kind of happening now at Blackford. I think they're finally realizing, okay, this guy's just going to do it the way he does it. We're not going to, not that anybody was trying anything, but I think they're starting to buy in. I hear it's when kids start saying stuff that you say, then it becomes,
oh, that's
okay, they're starting to get it. And the dad was telling the other day, he's like, he's like, you're not playing for Coach Uggen if you don't play like this. He's going to expect this. That's why I love taking the kids down to coach younger kids, because they might act like they don't care what you're saying, but when you make them the coach,
they say the same things. Yeah,
they become you.
That's awesome. Yeah,
and it's like, that's pretty cool.
That's a great feeling to have right there. It's something I witnessed while at Oak Hill for this past year.
Mm-hmm.
Renbarger's been there 20 plus years.
Oh yeah,
he's been a part of that program 20 plus years, and Coach Oz has been there 20
forever. I coached against him back in Golly.
And Shane has been there for 17, 18 years, and everybody coming through knows this is who you're going to play for. And Ben Johnson's been coaching softball for
was it King? Coach King, because wrestling forever.
Yeah,
and the guys in cross country and track. Those guys are always there.
Man,
woo!
He's such a rock star. I enjoyed so. I just enjoyed going into his classroom and observing him and all the, but he had a very different vibe to him, and just real enjoyable, and all of them were enjoyable to be around. That was a great place to be. I really enjoyed my time at Oak Hill. Great people, great place, and but it's that longevity piece. I had
exactly it's important, huge.
Just talking about some of the teachers that have been in the building for long term.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a culture that's in place, and that's what the expectation is. So culturally, I didn't have to do a whole lot.
Right.
Right. they had it on lockdown. My 7th grade team had lost some components to it, but that 8th grade team was on lockdown, and they knew what.
Right.
Here's how it
you
is.
go back for it, Russ Sutton. I was mentioning how many years was I played Babe Ruth basketball and football with him for years and years and years. And Mike Richardson, all those guys, Dave Bowman. I'm sure I'm forgetting a whole bunch of people that were there for a long time, but it makes a difference just to have that longevity. But
Speaking of longevity, we've been here a long time.
yeah, this is a lot longer than half hour we were shooting for.
Well, I knew it would go.
Cut and paste.
And
cut out the,
no, there's going to be no cut and paste.
I'm just hoping at the end of it, it's still called the Schick Show, if you know what I mean.
It always will be. It's close enough. That's I always one of the things I would tell students day one, when as an assistant principal and as a principal, you have that beginning of year convo, and I would say it's Mr. Schick. It's with an ick, not an ick.
Yeah.
And
I wasn't sure when you first told me the name of it. I'm like, what? So I looked it up. I'm like, okay, I feel a little better.
Well, I've been dealing with it my whole life.
Yeah, I'm sure you
Not
have.
like I haven't
That's
heard.
the running joke that never ends till death.
100%. It will be forever, and I'm okay with it. You either embrace it or you fight it. And boy, that's a long fight to fight your last name.
Yeah.
It's been mispronounced enough times where I don't know if I have heard any weird combination of it. Plus, my first name being Scott. So, you get the T at the end of it, so there's going to be then automatically you're like, shit, what's that sound like?
Yeah.
I've been asked in an interview, your last name. I said, what about it? It's junior high. I said, yeah. I said, I've never had a problem.
Wow.
I've been asked that question.
Really?
Yeah, 100%.
Wow. I would have never thought to ask you that.
Yeah. It's one of those things. It is the Schick Show. And,
it's been a pleasure. Enjoyed it.
well, I'm glad to have you. There's a ton of stuff on my notes here we still haven't touched on, but that's okay. We're that gives us a reason to come back
Someday.
and hang out.
Someday down the road.
But, I'm glad to have you on. Thank you so much. And now the groundskeeper, you're still like I go out on the trail and I see you out there still working.
Nobody bugs me.
Yeah.
I just do my own thing. They don't even tell me what to do. I mean, occasionally they'll say, hey, you need to weed eat down at BIS if you can. Okay. I don't care. I'm free to do what I want. It's enjoyable. I like being outside. Pop the head. Somebody probably would think I'm nuts. I put headphones on. Sometimes I just do wear headphones. I'm in my own little world, which sometimes isn't good. You start thinking of stuff like, why am I thinking about this? But I really enjoy it. It's kind of nice. I get home. I get in about 5. I'm going to have to back it up as the sun comes up later. But I'm home by 1 or 2, and it doesn't seem like work at all.
Good.
And it's good for Scott because I said it would have been great. I love doing it as an AD because it got me a chance to get out of the building kind of. But for him not have to worry about that was my primary thought. You focus on the stuff you need to focus on, not getting the field ready for a rain out or whatever.
Right.
Let me deal with that because I've done it for so long, and he can go ahead. So it's been a great experience for us. I've enjoyed it. So
what a benefit to have you around to
I appreciate it
to help out and be part of the community. I was excited when you came back to the community years ago.
That was part of it. I want to give back to my community. It's been, people knock. I've heard people knock and stuff. And when I was in Wabash, things were rough. It's like, I said, you know what? A lot of great people came out of Blackford County. I mean, you think about in education alone. It's insane.
I have the ISBA, the Indiana School Board Association directory in front of me, and I can look through this and see so many names have been connected or are originating from Blackford County. It's the number of conversations I've had with people that are not from Blackford County that go, man, it seems like there's a lot of people from Blackford County in teaching and administration. Yeah.
Somebody's doing something right.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be that way. We got astronauts for heck. And it's unbelievable what we've done.
It is. I mean, across the board. So, well, thank you for all you've done and continue to do. We appreciate you. And folks, you know how to get a hold of me. It's the real Mr. Schick at Instagram and whatever the other Twitter. I'm terrible at the whole social media thing. I've thought about maybe I could if I could get a kid intern to run my social media.
Wouldn't that be cool?
That would be awesome.
They'd be great at it.
I would absolutely love to have a kid to just, hey, I would love to handle your social media. Now I'm going to get 50 messages from.
Yeah, exactly.
But I'd like to eventually record it like video it,
Uh-huh.
and then build a YouTube channel. I was looking at that. I've had quite a number of people send me information about it. But, it's just a lot of work. I mean, it's just me. And it's not like I have sponsors. I'm not doing the whole sponsorship thing. And this is, I'm just having fun.
Some of those are pretty good, but I'd be afraid I'd do something embarrassing, not knowing it.
Right.
Since the camera's on, it's like, oh
God, I just picked my nose.
Yeah,
Can we edit
exactly.
that? No, it was a great
Yeah,
comment you just
it was
made.
live.
Well, thank you, brother. I appreciate you
Appreciate
being in here.
Been
And
fun.
everybody, you can just shoot me a message. Let me know what you're thinking. And, give me some feedback. This is a long one, folks. This is getting into that Joe Rogan territory. Man, I definitely had a Joe Rogan quality guest with me today. I'm glad he was in here classing it up and giving me the time. So, hey, that's it. We're out of here. See ya.